Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's reading vlog is going to be a vampire reading vlog where I am reading 3 vampire novels. Now, I love vampires when it comes to fiction, and one of the things that I love about vampires is that there is such a potential for such a wide variety of genres, of lore, of different types of vampire stories being told. You can find vampires in pretty much any genre, from romance to sci-fi to fantasy to horror. I love reading vampire fiction because of the versatility of vampires. Pretty much whatever reading mood I am in, I can find a vampire book for that, and conversely, whatever type of reader you are, I feel kind of confident that I can recommend a vampire book for you. So I'm really excited for this reading vlog. I picked out 3 very different vampire books to keep this vlog very fresh and very interesting. We have 2 new releases that came out in 2024, and then we also have a book that came out quite some time ago as well. So let's quickly introduce these 3 books before getting on with the vlog. The backlist book for this vlog is going to be Necroscope by Brian Lumley. This I have heard around a lot. It's a modern vampire classic. I believe it came out in the 1980s, and this series follows a protagonist who can talk to the dead and is trying to stop vampires from wiping out all of humanity. This did get a re-release a couple of years ago. It might be last year. It might have actually been this year as well, but the Necroscope series, at least the first couple books, got a retooling and were republished, so they kind of got a new wave of popularity. I actually heard about them through this re-release, so I figured I would give it a try. If you search vampire series recommendations or vampire horror, this one is one that often comes up, and I have heard that it is a very creepy original take on vampires. The next book that we're going to be reading for this vlog is Bless Your Heart by Lindy Bryan, and this one, you can just tell from the cover that it's a very different take on vampires. This is a cozy mystery about a group of women who run a funeral home, and their corpses at their funeral home start like reanimating, and they're vampires. So this one is definitely going to be, I think, a little less horrific, a little more cozy horror, cozy mystery. Rachel Harrison and Darcy Coates both have blurbs on the back of this book, so this leads me to believe this is going to be a very cozy horror or a cozy mystery. And then the third and final book that I am going to be reading for this vlog is Immortal Dark by Tigest Girma, and this one is a fantasy, but it's also a little bit of a dark academia. It says it's for fans of Ninth House, and it's like following a vampire academy, and there is some romance in here, but also some dark academia elements. This is also, I believe, start of either a duology or a series. So as you can tell from their covers, these are 3 very different takes on the vampire genre. We're gonna go ahead and start off this vlog with Necroscope by Brian Lumley. I cannot wait to dive into this modern horror classic, so I'm gonna go give that a go, and I will check back in later with a reading update. So I am not quite sure what I got myself into when I picked up Necroscope. I didn't know a lot about it, as you could maybe tell from the introduction of this vlog and the very brief synopsis that I gave about it, but I don't know. I don't know how I'm gonna like this one. I have only read the prologue and chapter 1, and that has already gotten me about 10% into the audiobook, so it was a very lengthy prologue and a very lengthy chapter 1. We have not gotten to the vampires yet. However, I think we're building up like the world building of like the science fiction tale, because the prologue had to deal with a secret society that was like an offshoot of the British Secret Services, and then chapter 1 had to deal with a offshoot of the KGB. So there are 2 opposing forces, and they both utilize people with special talents and abilities to kind of influence politics in a way, and of course, you know, further their own country's goals, because in chapter 1 it's talking about how they have a person who can tell the future on this like specific secret team, and they're talking about the downfall of Nixon before that happened. So these secret societies are utilizing people like psychics and like necromancers to get things done. I was not anticipating when I picked this up that this would be like a spy espionage sort of story. That's not generally like storylines that I typically enjoy or gravitate towards. I'm still going to try and stick this out a little bit more. I don't know, chapter 1 and the prologue, it didn't give me anything of what I was hoping for. The vampires have not been introduced yet. However, there are a lot of like magical elements, again, like I mentioned, with the necromancers, with the people who can see into the future. There's also a person who can, like, his dreams predict the future. So we already have those science fiction or fantasy elements, and then I'm sure we're going to introduce the vampires at some point. I know this is a long series, so I'm hoping that the vampires do come into play with this first book, but I don't know. I think I'm going to give this one to, maybe I'll try the first 3 chapters. I don't know, depending on how long chapter 2 is, maybe I'll only give it another chapter. But it is September and I do not want to spend a lot of time reading books that I'm really not loving. This one feels very dense. It's really focusing on this spy espionage sort of setting, and I'm not loving that. So we're gonna give it a little bit more of a shot today. Try another chapter and maybe see if we're going to continue on with this book, or maybe pick out another book for this vlog, because it's just not what I anticipated. So that is my Necroscope update. In book adjacent news, me and my partner watched The Watchers the other day and I enjoyed it. I thought that it was really interesting. Ashana Shyamalan is definitely taking a lot of pages out of her father's book when it comes to directing movies, and this one is based on a book by A.M. Shine and based on the movie, which I thought it was okay. It was like a solid 3 stars, a little bit predictable, especially if you know like mythology surrounding, it takes place in Ireland, okay, and it takes place in the forest in Ireland. So if you know a little bit about mythology and the different kind of folklore tales of Ireland, then you probably know where the story is going to go. But I enjoyed it overall, and I'm really interested to read the book now because I have heard that there are some substantial changes, and I think the book could be a really fun time. That is actually something that I've tried to do more often than not. I used to be someone who I had to read the book first before I watched the movie adaptation. Nowadays though, unless I've already read the book, I'm okay with watching the movie adaptation first, because I have noticed if I watch the movie and then read the book, I end up liking both of them more than if I read the book and then watch the movie, because the book is usually better. There are a lot of things, unfortunately, in books do not translate to the screen and vice versa. So I have kind of been approaching movie adaptations a little bit differently than I have in the past. In like the last couple of years, I've definitely tried to see them as 2 different entities, and that's just, it's really been beneficial for both my reading and viewing experience, because The Watchers was fun. I'm sure if I read the book and then watched the movie, I probably would not have liked it at all, based on what I've heard from some people who have read and watched both. But I enjoyed the movie. It was a fun time. Dakota Fanning is awesome. I really love seeing her in projects, and it was like very atmospheric. It was a fun time. We didn't go to the theaters or anything. We just saw it because it just released to Max, but I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to reading that book. Not in this vlog because it does not have to deal with vampires, but I thought I would mention it. The Watchers was a fun time. And then in not bookish at all news, but in fall news, I did get some new candles. I stocked up on some fall candles because I do not have a lot. I have one burning back there. It's caramel apple. I love it. It's a ghost-faced candle from Get Fictional, but I do not have any other fall scents other than that one. So the other day, Bath & Body Works had a sale where it was $5 for all of their single wick candles, which is an excellent deal. So I did stock up because it is spooky season and I need some fall scents so I can create ambiances to just have some really cozy reading time. So I did get some candles, wanted to show them because I love fall scents. The first one is Leaves. It's an absolute classic for me. This is like my all-time favorite scent, and it screams fall to me. I love it. I have to have at least one of these every single year because it's my all-time favorite scent. It's very appley. It has hints of clove. It really does capture like the scent and the ambiance of falling leaves outside, so this one's perfectly named. It's my all-time favorite. Another one that I have gotten before. It's not one that I have to have every single year, but I do really love it. That would be Pumpkin Bonfire. This one is pumpkin, but it's not like too much in your face like a lot of other pumpkins, and it has like a very sweet smoky smell. This one also has cloves in it. That's just kind of a reoccurring theme I've noticed in a lot of my favorite candle scents. I love a good clovey smell, so this is pumpkin, it's clove, it's a little bit of smoke, it's not too much, like it doesn't smell like someone is smoking in your home, but it just smells like a little bit of a bonfire, like when you're sitting at a campfire and you can kind of smell it on your clothes, but it's a little bit sweeter than that. A lot of Bath & Body Works pumpkin candles are really overpowering for me. This one is not an overpowering scent. Like Sweet Cinnamon Pumpkin, I love that one in theory. It smells really good, but then when you burn it, you have to burn it in like a huge house. You cannot burn it in an apartment or a small room because it's so overpowering. It's a lot. This one is a much milder, kind of sweet, smoky, pumpkin-y smell. I really love it. This next one I did get for my partner. It's Brown Sugar Toaster Treat. This one honestly kind of smells like they've had a toasted s'mores before. It smells a little bit like that one if I'm being honest, but this one is a very sweet brown sugar cinnamony smell. I did say I got this one for my partner, but I do love a good gourmand scent as well. So I think this one is new. I haven't seen it before. Full disclosure, I did work at Bath & Body Works a number of years ago for several years. So I have all of this like very niche knowledge about scents and Bath & Body Works products and packaging that is just not really useful to me anywhere other than just talking about scents in random haul videos on YouTube. But this one I feel like is maybe Campfire Donut, actually. Campfire Donut, Toasted S'mores, something like that. This smells very familiar, but I think this is a new packaging, new fragrance, but I've smelled it before. It's a good gourmand, very cinnamony. And then last but not least, we have Pumpkin Apple. This has pumpkin, this has apple, this has cinnamon, and say it with me, it has clove. This one is another very quintessential fall scent for me. Leaves is my favorite scent of all time, but this one comes in a close second to my favorite fall autumnal scents. It's really good. It has a great blend of apple and pumpkin, and again, not too overpowering. I just absolutely love this one. So I'm really excited that I got those candles. I think they're gonna be perfect for reading. There is nothing I love more than sitting down with a book, putting on an ambient room or a soundscape, and lighting a good seasonal candle. I love creating an immersive atmosphere to read in. I think it just really elevates the experience. So I'm excited about those candles. I'm excited to hopefully, I don't know, I hope that I do like Necroscope. I'm going to, after I finish this vlog update, dive into it again, and fingers crossed. I've heard great things about this series, just it's not clicking with me so far, but we'll see. The next update, I'll let y'all know if I decide to keep reading Necroscope or pick something else up. And yeah, I've got my fall candles. It's officially September. I'm looking forward to some great vampire reads. I'm hoping Necroscope is going to be one of them, so I'm gonna go get to reading and I will talk to y'all later. I cannot do it anymore. We are DNFing Necroscope. It's about 2 hours later than my last update. I'm now 20% into the audiobook and I am on chapter 3 and I don't love it. I don't love it. 20% of the way in and there has not even been a hint of vampires, which normally I'm okay with. I can deal with a slow-paced book, and if there were other things that I was liking about this story, I could wait for the vampires. I could be like, okay, no vampires 20% in, we're keeping on trucking because I like the rest of the story. I don't think I'm going to like this one. This is written in a very 80s pulp fiction kind of style, and that is something that either really works for me or really doesn't. I've tended to realize that the books, first of all, Grady Hendrix does the Paperbacks from Hell series, like the reprints of old out of print 80s pulp horror novels. I've noticed a lot of those I tend to have a lot of success with. I think overall I have more success with that series because number one, those are like the best of the best. Like Hendrix is curating those books and then republishing them, but also those books tend to be shorter. The 80s pulp horror style, I really I really like the idea of it, and I like it a lot in shorter books and like 80s pulpy B horror movies. I love those as well. So I don't hate it as a whole entire concept, but this is very long, very tedious, written in that 80s pulp style, but it's not pulp horror. It feels almost more like a Cold War thriller, which is just not something that I'm interested in at all. I don't really want to read about a Cold War era book. The politics of the times in regards to the Cold War and then just the novel in general are just very dated and very hard to get through. We have finally met our main character, Harry Keogh, and he is a child. I was not expecting him to be a child. I don't know why. I thought he was an adult. He's a child, and he's experiencing some signs that he might be communicating with ghosts, which should be an interesting premise. It should be so cool, but just the way that this is told, like, it's really, really interesting ideas that the way that they're being told make them seem dull, which is just not what I'm in the mood for. The first chapter of this one in particular, the scene that happens, if I were to watch it in a movie, it would be so shocking, it would be so fascinating and horrific, and I would not be able to take my eyes from the screen. But the way that this was told, it just read like very mundane and dull, which was weird because it was such an engaging concept in theory. So this whole entire book, I feel like that's been the case for me so far. 20% of the way through in the audiobook, that's 3 hours and 20 minutes, and just not a lot has happened. I don't like the writing style. The characters feel very surface level, and we spend a lot of time with them. We should feel like they're more fleshed out than surface level. So just this one, not working for me. I think the concepts are cool. There's no vampires, and the way that they're introducing like these really cool abilities like being able to talk with the dead and necromancy, the way that they're being described is not engaging for me. So because it is September, I do not want to spend another hour more in September reading a book that I do not love. So we are DNFing. This could be one that maybe y'all could convince me to reread in the future. Maybe I need to read it physically and not via audio, or maybe I need to give it more time. I don't know. I know that this book series has a cult following. So if you love this series, let me know down below. Like, provide a case for it, and I might pick it up at some other point in time. Just at this point in time, it's a DNF. We are returning it back to the library, and I am going to pick out another book to read for this vlog, and I'm hoping that the next book is going to go a little bit better for me. I don't know which one it's going to be yet as I'm filming this. I wasn't anticipating coming on and giving another update today for this vlog, but we'll just have to see. I might listen to the first chapter of the 2 books that I still have yet to read for this vlog and then decide which one that I want to read from there, but that's the update. Necroscope is gonna be a no for me so far, and then I don't know, hopefully the next book goes a little bit better, but I will check back in tomorrow with another reading update. So it is now the next day. I'm very happy to report that the next book is definitely going a lot better, and that is going to be Immortal Dark by Tigest, Girma, and I'm about 16% of the way through this one. I'm listening to it via audiobook. Allegro FM was so kind and gave me an advanced listener copy to this one, and it actually came out yesterday when I'm filming this clip. So very recent release, came out beginning of September, and I'm having a lot of fun with this one. A little bit of a caveat because it has to deal with vampires, and I feel like especially there are 2 very, very different camps of vampires. We've got scary vampires and sexy vampires, and this one is definitely more of the latter. Honestly, I would say the biggest comp title for this one is not Ninth House. Do not go into it expecting Ninth House vibes. It does have an academia setting. We're following our character at a very magical school, but it's not Ninth House. I would honestly compare this one more to Fourth Wing. Hear me out. I think this one really should deserve the marketing push and the popularity that Fourth Wing is getting, because we have that romantasy setting. We have a book that does have a lot of fantasy world building, and we have a lot of world building and structure and mythology. One thing that is super cool about this book is that it has to deal with Ethiopian mythology, and I think that's really cool. I can't think of off the top of my head a book that I have read that deals with that sort of mythology. So the magic system, vampire lore, it's Ethiopian mythology inspired, so I think that is super cool. But back to my Fourth Wing comparison, I actually think this one is written a little bit better than Fourth Wing, but it does definitely feel like a Romantasy. So if you are a Romantasy hater, just don't pick this one up, because I know you're not going to like it, but I like a good Romantasy every now and then that's like very cheesy. I hate saying this, but y'all know what I mean when I say it, like a guilty pleasure book. Like, it's just fun. It's not the best book in the world, but it's a whole lot of fun. It's not going to be a modern classic, but I am having a great time enjoying it and reading it, and it definitely feels like, you know, like Vampire Diaries vibes. Like, there are some serious elements, there are some dark and even some scary elements, but it is like also like very unintentionally campy and drama filled and relationship filled as well. So know that going. And my comp title for this one is, it is not Ninth House, but it is Fourth Wing, but with vampires instead of dragons. And this is very, very autumnal. So if you love fantasy romance, or if you love romance and maybe want something that's like a little bit more darker, a little bit more spooky for spooky season, I think you could really love this one. So we are following our main character, and she is struggling at the beginning of this book. Her sister has gone missing, and she is finding it really hard pressed to get anyone to care about her sister. Her sister, herself, and all of the main characters in this book are Black, so that's important because the police and the justice system don't really care. They immediately label her a runaway, but our main character believes that this is not the case, primarily because her and her sister are heirs to this bloodline that deal with vampires and have an inheritance that has to heavily deal with vampires. So she has sworn off these vampire ways. She does not want anything to do with her legacy, with her inheritance, but she does receive an offer to inherit the house of her ancestors. If she takes this offer, she receives the house. She does have to train at this school side by side with vampires that she so despises, but she could be able to solve the mystery of where her sister went and if her sister's still alive or not. So our main character does take this offer up, and she is thrown into this magical world, magical schools with these families that have a very uneasy peace and a very uneasy alliance with vampires that are tethered to their bloodlines. So that is the setup of this story. We've already been introduced to who I assume is the love interest, which is the vampire that's tethered to her bloodline. And when I say that this book is enemies to lovers, these two hate each other. This is a very lengthy audiobook. Like I mentioned, I'm 16% of the way through, and I have about 12 hours left. So this is very chunky, and I'm very interested to see. The main character can get a little annoying at times, but you know, we'll see how that progresses, because she is the most angsty character that I've ever read from, and it can get a little bit annoying at times because, you know, just going into this setup that what she thinks about the world is obviously not going to be right when it comes to her family inheritance, and just like vampires in general. She has a lot of prejudices, and she's very violent and very abrasive, but that is all coming from trauma. So I'm interested to see how her character evolves, and I'm interested to see, she just got to the school, and I want to see how that magical school goes, because that is what drew me into this premise, was that it was a vampire magical school. The Ninth House comparisons, I'm gonna be honest, did draw me the most. But I will say now that I've adjusted my expectations, and I know that it's a Fourth Wing style ride, and it's going to be more romantasy, more like Vampire Diaries than the Vampire Chronicles, then I think I could have a good time with this one. The audiobook is great. The narrator is doing a really good job. It's narrated by Jordan Cobb. So yeah, I'm intrigued. It's a fun time. It's a really fun time. This definitely feels like one of those guilty pleasure reads. It is very tropey,
but in a way that is intentional, because I do feel like for any genre, right? Like things that are tropes because they're popular and a lot of people tend to like them. So a lot of the beats of an enemies to lovers in a fantasy setting are gonna be here. So yeah, definitely having a lot of fun with this one so far. Today I do have to go to the library, return some books, pick up some holds. I have a lot of time in the car, that means. So I am going to be listening to this one a lot today. I will check back in tomorrow, give y'all another reading update, but that is it for now. I gotta run to the library. I'll see y'all later. So I am now 50% into Immortal Dark and I'm still really enjoying it. It's a lot of fun. It definitely has those Fourth Wing Romantasy type vibes where we do have a storyline that's heavily featured around an enemies to lovers romance. There's some miscommunication. Our lovers may not realize that they are both on the exact same side and they think that they're enemies, and you know, we've got that romance. We have that tension, but we also have fantasy world building, which is really interesting as well. Again, I'm loving the Ethiopian folklore, and that's actually something that I'm hoping in the latter 50% that we do get a bit more of, because this is set at a magical school for vampires and their human companions, and we haven't gotten too much of that. Like, we've gotten some scenes, and those have been some of my favorite scenes when we're in the classrooms and when we're doing like events that have to deal with the school. Those have been my favorite parts. I want more of that. I'm hoping for more dark academia ambiance, but this is a whole lot of fun. Definitely would continue to recommend it for people who love romantasy. I think this would be a great book for this time of year, and it's definitely one where I'm just having a good time. You know, I was a little bit worried. There was a book that I DNF'd in this vlog, and there have been some other books for other vlogs that I haven't been loving in September, so this has just been such a great palette cleanser for me, and just sit back and relax and enjoy a vampire and a human enemies to lover type of story. Kidan is a very interesting protagonist to follow. She is a lot. She is a lot, and a lot of that is impacted by the trauma that she's faced at the onset of this story. I think she's definitely one where people could find her a little bit annoying. I would almost, this is gonna sound like such a wild comparison, but Rin in the Poppy War series, she's a very, very strong character, but she's also a character that people either love or hate. I think Kidan is in that same sort of setting. Like, she's got opinions, and she's very brash and headstrong and maybe leaps before she looks, and I think that could rub some people the wrong way. But you know, I do think that the backstory really influences, I mean, for both her and Rin. This is not about the Poppy War, but just the trauma of the character really influences her personality and the decisions that she is making. She's very single-minded. She has one goal. I'm in no way, I want to be clear, comparing this book to the Poppy War, because they're completely different. Don't go into this one expecting Ninth House. Don't go into this one expecting Poppy War. All I'm saying is that Rin and Kidan are two very, very headstrong and very strong female characters. So I think that could get a little annoying. There have definitely been times where I'm like, Kidan, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's like there are 3 roads and 2 of them are good choices and the other one is the most reckless choice you could make, and she just runs straight to that one every single time. So this character is a lot, but not in a way that I'm hating. So I do think this is going to be the last update that I give on this book before I finish it, because I don't anticipate myself having a lot, like too much more to say about this one than I haven't already said, other than the fact that it's a fun time, it's a romantic see. It feels really perfect for this time of year. So I'm gonna go get to reading that, and I will check back in later with another reading update when I finished this book. Okay, we interrupt this reading vlog to bring news that this is such a strange collab, but it's really working for me. Oreo Coca-Cola, it tastes really good, but I am someone who also liked the Peeps Pepsi that came out a couple years ago, so yeah. here to say this is a great reading snack, so we'll kind of loosely tie this one into the reading vlog. But I am currently drinking this while I'm listening to Immortal Dark. It has nothing to do with the books, but yeah, as you can tell also from the Stranger Things candle, I like sweet things. So if you like sweet things, this Oreo Coke is really hitting. It's really good. So 10 out of 10. Well, I don't know if it's 10 out of 10, but it's definitely, I'd recommend. It's fun. Okay, so I finished Immortal Dark by Tigest, Girma, and I had a lot of fun with this one. I'm really glad to see this starting to get some more hype. I know I started it right when it first came out, and since then, as I've been reading it, I've been seeing more people pick this one up and really loving it. So I'm glad that it is getting its flowers, because it definitely feels like a book that a lot of people could love this time of year, and I really enjoyed it as well. It was a whole lot of fun. Now, this was a debut by the author, and while it was a really strong debut, it did show that it was a debut just in some aspects of the storytelling. I felt like the pacing, especially towards the middle, was just a little uneven, and then I just wanted overall more ambiance of this dark academia setting. We have a human going to a boarding school slash magical school where humans and vampires learn to coexist with each other, and there were a handful of classroom scenes, and I always think that those are really effective in building up like the world and introducing lore and helping explain without info dumping the world and the magic system and everything that is happening. So I liked the few scenes that we got in the classroom. I do wish there was more of that. I do wish there was more of like an academia feel to this, but I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it overall, and I will be checking out the next book in this series. It was a whole lot of fun. I enjoy an enemies to lovers story that is truly enemies to lovers and really takes its time. At the end of this book, this is not really a spoiler, I don't think, but Kidon and Susenyos, they're not in love. They are not in love. They are just starting to very tentatively trust each other, but that is not to say that there aren't some scenes throughout here where there is like some strange sort of pining. It's a very interesting dynamic. It's a great enemies to lovers dynamic, and it's definitely not rushed or insta-love or anything like that. I can't stand that when things are supposed to be enemies to lovers and then like they're almost basically to a happily ever after by book one. So this is definitely going to be a slow burner. I had a lot of fun with it, and I'm really looking forward to reading the next book in this vlog, and that is going to be Bless Your Heart by Lindy Ryan. This is a cozy horror, and it takes place in 1999 in Southeast Texas, and the Evans women are owners of the only funeral parlor in town, and they are keeping steady with business as usual. The dead die, you bury them, end of story. But all of a sudden, that is not what is happening. When a body is brought in for a regular burial, but instead she rises from the dead, it is clear that the Evans women that run this funeral home have to rise up and fight these vampires from taking over the town. So I'm really intrigued. I do have the physical, as you can see. I also have the audiobook checked out from my library. So I think this will be kind of a little bit of a tandem read. I anticipate this one going a lot speedier than my last two, just because it is the shortest. I have no idea what to expect with this one. It is cozy horror. Like I think I mentioned before, Darcy Coates and Rachel Harrison have blurbed this on the back, but we also have Nat Cassidy and Christy DeMeester, who don't really do cozy horror, have also blurbed this. So I'm interested to see how cozy it is, how horrific it's going to get, and I think this is going to be a very unique vampire story, at least from what I have read in the past. So I am going to go get to reading this, and I'll check back in later with another reading update. So I have made it to chapter 6 of Bless Your Heart, and I'm having a fun time so far. I'm really enjoying it. Cozy horror, definitely a hit or a miss at times for me, but this one really starts out with a bang. The prologue feels very creepy, very eerie, and we kind of get a sense for what is going on. And then chapter 1, we get into our main characters. We're following the Evans family, and we are following 4 generations of this family. They run the funeral home in town, and they are also on the side of vampire hunters, it seems like. So we are following 4 generations of the Evans family. We have Ducey, we have her daughter Lenore, we have her daughter Grace, and then her daughter Luna, and they run a funeral home. It's very much giving Sabrina Spellman and her aunts type of vibes, and these women also seem to have a secret, because not only do they run this funeral home, but when bad things start happening, they immediately know it's vampires. It seems like this is something that the family has dealt with before. So this is very fast-paced. Chapter 1, we have a body that's rising from the dead, and we immediately see these ladies jump into action. They know what's going on. They know to stake this body through the heart, and they know that they're vampires, and they're trying to hide it from like the rest of the town as they're getting this body ready for her viewing. I have just made it to about the 20% mark. We have really hit the ground running. I think the juxtaposition of these society southern ladies and then them slaying vampires, I think that's a juxtaposition that works really well. One of the lines that kind of cemented this fun dynamic for me is that one of the older Evans women tells the youngest, like, hey, you need to act like a lady. That's not ladylike, about something that she does. And then in the same chapter, she's also stabbing someone through the heart. So I really enjoy that. I really enjoy just the small town southern life, and this whole entire, I think it's so cool that we are following 4 generations of a family. So I definitely have a great first impression of this book. I'm gonna go get to reading, and I will check back in later with another reading update. So I am now 40% of the way through Bless Your Heart, and I'm having a whole lot of fun with this one still. I would definitely say this feels like Scooby-Doo to me in terms of the stakes. Not like one of the regular episodes, but potentially like Scooby-Doo and Zombie Island, like one of the feature films where it's elevated just a little bit more. There's a little bit more of a creep factor than a normal episode, but you're still not going to get nightmares from this. But I am really enjoying it. This cozy horror works for me. At least it's working so far, and I think a big reason why cozy horror is so hit or miss for me is that humor in books tends to be very hit or miss for me, so this one's really working. I'm enjoying the small town dynamics, and I'm loving the fact that I'm following this family. I like following older protagonists. I feel like that's something that we're starting to see more, and I'm trying to seek out more in my reading is older protagonists, because I'm just loving those family elements and how we are following these 4 generations of a vampire hunting family, or a strigoi hunting family. That is what vampires are called in here. I will say the least engaging parts to me have to deal with Luna and her high school experience. It's just, that's like my least favorite plot line is, and I know it's going to, in the next 50% of the book, get more and more important to the rest of the story. There are some secrets involving this family that Luna is obviously going to be involved with, but just for now, the high school plotline is my least favorite, so that is a little bit detracting my enjoyment from here, because every chapter we are switching point of view to a different character, and I'm loving all of them except for Luna so far. So hoping that I say the next 50%, I'm 40% of the way through this one, so the next 60% I'm hoping that I start enjoying her storyline a little bit more, because I have a feeling that it's going to be a very big part of this story. So yeah, overall, this is a really fun time. I'm having a lot of fun, and it's a very fast read. So honestly, I am hoping to finish this one today, and I will check back in, let y'all know my thoughts. Okay, so I finished Bless Your Heart, and overall I had a fun time with this one. The vampire lore was very interesting because depending on what stage of the undead the vampires were, they were either more like traditional Dracula vampires or they were more like zombies. So I thought that was really interesting for a cozy horror. This definitely had a lot of gruesome moments, especially when it came to body horror or death scenes. I thought this was a really good mix of the cozy mystery elements and then also the horror elements. I will say this is pretty easy to figure out what is happening. The main mystery, who done it, like that's pretty easy to figure out, and I don't know if it's just because I don't read a lot of cozy mystery, so maybe it's like, you know I compared it to Scooby-Doo. Like Scooby-Doo is not like the most twisty turny thriller imaginable, so I don't mind that I figured out who done it, because I think the purpose of this one is like the character development along the way and finding out different things alongside different characters. So I don't know, I did think this was pretty easy to figure out, but there were still some twists at the end, or not twists, but rather like the way that things played out that were still interesting. So even though I do think this was a little bit predictable, it wasn't in a bad way. I did still have a good time reading it. I will say I did not know that this was the start to a series, so that's interesting. This vlog, I didn't intend for it to be so, but all of the vampire books that I read were a part of a series. So yeah, I probably should have guessed that this would be a start of a series because it's, you know, cozy. Cozy mysteries are generally series. It's very rare to find a standalone cozy, so I should have maybe assumed that this cozy mystery horror would be the same way. And of course I was comparing it to Scooby-Doo throughout the entire time, and that is obviously like an episode series. So this, you know, is the start of a series. I will be continuing on with the series probably. I did think this wrapped up pretty nicely on its own, but then we have a little bit of an epilogue, things that happen in the last chapter that I'm like, oh, okay, I see how this is being drawn out into a series, and I will be reading it. Just to put in perspective in terms of my personal enjoyment, it is not a sequel that I will be picking up on release day. It's not one where, having read this, I need to pick up the second one right now. I feel pretty confident in this like as a good sort of standalone book, even though I know that the story is continuing, and I will be checking out that second book eventually. I don't know when it comes out or anything like that, but I am interested in following this family some more. So I did have a really good time, and I'm pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed this cozy horror. So with that book being finished, it is time to wrap up this vlog. Overall, I had a good time, and I definitely read 3 very different interpretations of vampires. So just, you know, a little bit of a wrap up for all of the books. Necroscope, I did not enjoy this one. We all know that I DNF'd it, but I would recommend this one to people who are looking for like a pulpy sort of vampire tale. If you like Cold War stories, if you like spy thrillers, and if you like the 80s pulp fiction of it all, I think this one could be a really good fit for you. If you're a sci-fi lover, especially like classic pulpy sci-fi, I think you could really love this series. And then of course we have Immortal Dark. This one is going to be for my romantasy lovers, but also, you know, for my dark academia lovers or my fantasy lovers that want something a little bit more romance forward. That's also perfect for the autumn. I think it was a lot of fun and I really enjoyed it. I will be continuing on with this series because I really enjoyed the character building and the development, and I thought it was a really solid debut. It was a lot of fun just in terms of those fantasy romance elements. So if you are a fantasy romance person, definitely put Immortal Dark on your radar. And then of course we have Bless Your Heart, which is a little more fun. It's definitely a lot more cozy than the other two. This is great for my people who like cozy mysteries, I would say. Just like the kind of like comforting formulaic way that the mystery plays out, but we do have some pretty gruesome body horror scenes. I thought this blended that cozy mystery and horror pretty well. It's definitely a series that I could see myself picking up. I don't know like how many of this series that this author is going to put out, but I'll definitely be checking out the sequel because I did really enjoy the characters in here. I enjoyed the family. I think especially if you do read a lot of horror and you're looking for something a little cozier, maybe not as gruesome, maybe you just read something horrible in terms of like body horror or gore or something like that, and you want something a little less shocking, a little more cozy, maybe a little more nostalgic in time for the autumn spooky season, I think Bless Your Heart would be a really great pick for that. 3 very different interpretations of vampires, but overall I had a lot of fun reading them and kind of figuring out which vampires that I enjoyed. But that is going to be it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, let me know what is your favorite vampire book, subscribe to my channel for all of the bookish, horror, and cozy gaming content. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!